Hello and welcome to the SACCO Insight podcast, where we are amplifying people's voices. My name is George Ombado, the Executive Director of ACOSCA. Welcome to SACCO Insight, where we are amplifying people's voices using the credit union SACCO industry to empower people living not just in the continent but across the globe. Today our conversation is around regulation and compliance and how that can strengthen the financial cooperative system. I'm pleased and honored that we have a true credit union leader, a true champion, because I see you're just a natural person who believes in the credit union system. He's been the chairperson of African American Credit Union Coalition before. He's also been the chairperson of the Credit Union National Association, which is currently called American Credit Unions. And for us, we are lucky that we have him. And he's also been a practitioner. He's been the CEO and president of local government Federal Credit Union in Raleigh.
Yes.
So welcome, Maurice Smith.
Thank you, George.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
This is my third time, I believe, in Kenya, so it feels like home now.
Yeah. And we are glad that you are part of the committee of experts that has been appointed by the government of Kenya to support this great work that we are doing to support the credit union system. So my first question is, if I may ask, who is Maurice Smith?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You know, that changes with the seasons, you know. For a long time, I identified myself as simply, you know, just an humble small town boy, and then went to work for credit unions for 43 years, and I sort of identified myself as part of the cooperative, you know, association and society and industry as a practitioner. Today I'm retired, though my wife disagrees with that. I'm busier than ever. So who am I today? I'm a big fan of SACCOs and credit unions. I'm a big fan of cooperatives. I'm a practicing lawyer and a consultant to the business. But this is the way I believe. Cooperatives is the way to lift people to a higher standard of living. Okay. It's good for individuals, for families, for communities, and the nation at large. Yeah. So to have an opportunity to participate in the committee of experts is a high honor for me.
Okay, interesting. I'll say that for me, my first time to engage in the system in the credit union in US was in 2014 when I did my development educators program in Raleigh, your city at that time, where the local government Federal Credit Union is, which is a very big credit union, by the way, making huge impact in communities. I'm also pleased to mention that when you see us working in SACCO Insight, we got this at a time that perhaps you are the chairperson of American Credit Union System during the Government Affairs Conference in Washington, D.C. We've had a close relationship with CU Insight, Randy Smith, co-founder. And we also had a close relationship with the CU broadcast, Mike Larson.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So credit union is about a family. You wouldn't know that 10 years ago you'd be linked and actively engaged in Africa, and I believe what Diana says is actually maybe you're living your purpose at the moment.
Indeed.
Yeah, supporting the credit union system globally. So when it comes to regulation and compliance, we are keen, particularly looking at your legal mind, and again, you've been a practitioner leading a huge credit union system in the United States of America. Why is regulation and compliance important in seeing that the credit unions are doing the right thing and people get empowered through the credit union at the local level?
That's an insightful question.
Yeah.
So let's start with the role of government. The role of all government is to do what individual citizens can't do for themselves. And that is to provide an environment, an atmosphere for individuals to thrive, for families to be safe, to have confidence in the systems that they use for their communities and for their own, protections. So that's the role of government. But government is also supposed to provide a sort of a theme of regulations. And regulations are those rules that we who work in the community and in industry use as a guidepost on how we conduct business. You know, George, not all financial institutions know exactly what to do, and we need help. We need help sort of playing the rules of the game. So think about it. If it's a football game or a baseball game or any other game you might think of, there's always rules to the game. What counts as a foul? What counts as scoring a point? How do you play fair? How do you show good sportsmanship? How do you make sure that everyone who participates in the game is able to get out what they expect? Well, regulations are sort of like that. It's important for us as practitioners and for consumers who benefit from financial services to know that my institution, my SACCOs, my credit union is obeying a set of rules for the road on how we operate. Now, government's job is to make sure those rules are fair, they're applicable to the risk that we undertake, and making sure that they listen to all of the various stakeholders involved, including the credit union practitioners, the volunteers of the SACCOs, and also the members who use those services.
I like when you say about having fair engagement.
Yes.
And in a world where at times people perceive, at times it could be perception, at times it could be read, where people feel the rules are fair.
Yes.
And what you're trying to communicate to us here is it's a win-win situation.
Exactly. It's not only win-win, but our responsibilities as participants in the system is to be advocates for ourselves, to advocate for our members and for our communities. Government can make mistakes just like any entity can. But if they are collaborative and participating with those institutions that they are regulating, ultimately we'll come up with a set of rules that government can live with, the institution can live with, and the members of the community and the society will also find useful as well.
What advice will you give SACCOs to find a way of attracting communities, the manner in which I saw your credit union in Raleigh do?
One of the things SACCOs have to be reminded of, I did as a credit union practitioner, is that we have a superpower. And that power is that we are part of a community. And for many instances, the SACCOs itself is the community. We have a field of membership, we have a membership base, and these members and depositors and borrowers, they participate in the operation of our SACCOs. So we should leverage that power, that audience, that connection, that familiar relationship that we have with our members to make ourselves better. Simply because I worked at a credit union didn't mean that I had all the answers. And I would make mistakes from time to time, and my members would call me on it. But the power of the membership base that the SACCOs has separates it from every other kind of organization in the world. Because for most companies that have to operate, they have to go out and find a market, they have to identify with that market, they have to build some kind of cohesive, familiar relationship with the people they want to serve. Well, SACCOs, you already know who your market is. You already have the relationship. You already have the community. So using that intel that you have with your community, with your membership, already positions you ahead of the for-profit corporations. So we should take advantage of that.
Oh, great. And how does the regulator play a role in seeing that that actually happens? That there's already an ability for SACCOs to serve people and build trust? Your advice based from experience that you've had in the United States?
We would remind our regulator that we are not foes. We are working together for the betterment of the credit union industry and the membership. So if something, an idea or rule or process or service is good for the credit union and is provided in a risk safety way, then it's also good for the regulators as well. I'm not aware of any regulators who would find it in their interest to see their regulated institutions fail. So deeply in their hearts, it's inherently important for a regulator to make sure that the institutions that it supervises do well, they grow, they're profitable, the members are happy, they're expanding their field of membership, their target market is growing, they're being more competitive. That, to me, is the highest demand and responsibility of a regulator, to make sure that my regulated institutions are really thriving.
I like when you given us a three-legged stool,
yes.
where we cannot, for the stools to actually stand and you sit on the stool, we need this collaboration. And in an environment that you've lived in, and even in Africa, at times, as I said, people think life might be so unfair. And I'll say without any shadow of doubt that in our modern times, we rarely find credit union leaders, even in the United States of America, African American, who've reached the level, I call it the summit, like you've reached.
Well,
and you're a champion of inclusivity, you're a champion of everybody needs to be empowered.
Exactly.
What drives you to that extent that, yes, you're supporting regulation, but regulation, let it be in a space that people are empowered?
George, I love that question. So being inclusive, being able to show diversity in an organization has two perspectives I'd like to share with you. The first one is, it's just a nice thing to do. Nobody wants to live in an environment where I am mutually excluded from opportunities, I'm disregarded, I'm disrespected, I'm overlooked, and I'm not treated as a valued commodity for an organization, for a SACCOs or community. So first of all, treating people well is just a decent human trait. Now, for those in the audience who don't appreciate that, and they want something a little more business-minded as to why being inclusive is good, there's also a business model for it as well. For George, being a lawyer, I am a student of failure. My job is to understand how other organizations and other parties have failed, and then I learn that lesson, and then I go share it with my client. So I have been often known to the young lady, her name was Shirley, and she would come into my office every day to empty out the waste paper basket. And I asked, Shirley, please sit down for a moment. I have an idea I want to run by you before I take it to my board of directors. And she would sit and she would listen to my ideas. And sometimes she would say, that was a good idea, and you should take that to the membership. There's been a few occasions she said, that's a dumb idea and you need to forget it. I appreciated that kind of, forethought, because she was sharing me her lived experiences in a way that helped me make better decisions. So if you're inclusive and you have diverse opinions for the decisions you have to make, I think that makes you a much smarter SACCOs.
Thank you. SACCO Insight, amplifying people's voices. Today we are seated with a big name, Maurice Smith, not just respected for the work that is done, but for somebody who values and champions that everybody is equal in our own right. As a matter of fact, the academy that we sit in today, when he was the CEO and president of local government federal credit union, they played a key role in supporting us. And one of the first contributors in the academy was during your time, I think the second person. I'd also like to mention, give a shout out to African American Credit Union Coalition, where you sit as a board and have also been part of the process of committee of experts. Renee, the executive director, president, I give a big shout out. And for me, one of the things that I'll want to ask when you talk about regulation, and with the background I've given in terms of the relationship we've had, you might not have known or expected us 10 years to be where we are today. And I've had you in meetings, I've had you in big stages in United States. I've spoken to members who are talking about the work that you've been doing. And when you talk about inclusivity, you've always brought in the other part of, again, diversity. You've brought about equity.
Yes.
At times when people talk about inclusivity, they think it's just one side.
Exactly.
But what you talk about diversity without any fear that you are sitting with people of diverse views. What advice would you give the audience on how they can adapt this three-legged engagement: diversity, equity, and inclusivity, without fearing, because this is our DNA as credit union.
It is our DNA.
Yeah.
We as credit unions are more than just an institution and more than just an organization. We are a community. And George, I love it when I come to your conference. I come here in Kenya and I hear credit unions referred to as a family. That's who we are. And so in a family, it would be disruptive and dysfunctional to say that some family members are more valuable than other family members. So we all are equal in any number of ways you want to think about it, whether it's from a constitutional pronouncement or our own faith and how we understand how God sees us as all being equal. But if we're all equal, we should all have a fair opportunity for success and engagement in the system that's going to help us be successful.
Thank you. One of the other things that when we were last week in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia,
yes,
one of the things that and we've discussed this with you for close to 2 years now, how we can develop a model law for the credit unions in the continent. And I'm hoping that this year when we meet in the Congress in Ghana,
yes,
you'll be part of the key team in front, showing this is what the regulators actually came up with. Why do you think this is critical to have a model, just a standard law, despite the fact that we are 54 countries in the continent?
Exactly. I think a model law works well in so many areas. So in the law, and particularly in the United States, we have statutes and rules and regulations. But there are those of us who worked in various organizations who will construct model laws that if we had our wherewithal and control over Congress or a legislative body, these are the rules that we think that you should use. In many instances, those legislative bodies will look at our model law. And many of those provisions in the model law, which is a suggestion and it's persuasive, will end up being codified in actual statutes. So when we think about advocating for ourselves, I think it's important to be aspirational. That if we had a perfect world and everything worked out exactly as we want it to be, it'd be good for the community, good for the SACCOs, good for the nation. What would that world look like? That's the model law we are crafting to ensure there's fairness and there's balance and there's equity in the systems. So those who have to make decisions later aren't starting from scratch. They're starting from our sense of ideals about what's important for progress in the future. So we're happy to share with them, here's what we think you should do. Now, in advocacy, we don't always get what we want, but we at least have to start from aspiration. This is what we think you should do. If we're persuasive, then a lot of our provisions will end up being codified.
That's a great response, particularly again coming at a time which I continuously mention. Some of these to me will be remembered for many years to come. This year has been declared the International Year of Cooperatives, with a theme of building a better world, where we are working with the UN, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. The main objective is to see that responsible for Sustainable Development Goal, the 17 of those. So with that thinking and you feeling the model law is there to help us solve problems. I believe when you have a model law, you provide an equal footing.
Yes.
In your environment, we have stronger deposit guarantee scheme. In our environment, as you had in Ethiopia, this has been a challenge as you develop the modern law.
Yes.
Why do you think having a deposit guarantee scheme for the credit union sector in the continent and various countries critical to the success of the credit union?
It's extraordinarily important to give the consumer, the member, the depositor, a sense of confidence that when I deposit my hard-earned savings into a SACCO, that it is protected. And in the worst case scenario, if there's an economic calamity and my SACCO should fail, heaven forbid, but should it fail, that my deposits will not be lost. Now, there are the deposit guarantees for banks in some countries that may not be for SACCOs, So it's important, I think, for the community to see a SACCO is just as safe and secure as it is for a bank. So let's have a level playing field for that sense of security among both types of institutions. So I think it's important from that standpoint as well. We've had a deposit guarantee program in the United States for credit unions since 1970, and for banks since 1933. So there was a period of time that banks had deposit guarantee and credit unions did not. And we fought hard with Congress, took some time, but we were able to establish it in 1970. So now all financial institutions that take deposits, all those deposits are insured by an implied guarantee by the federal government, but also by a separate fund that we have for banks and also for credit unions.
One of the things that is in the continent, which could be your parting shot to help us engage with the continent, is when you look at most of the countries, at times the citizens feel the SACCOs are charitable organizations, the credit union are charitable organizations.
Yeah.
They don't look at it as a vehicle to empower them. And you've already mentioned certain things that they should see that will help build trust, like a modern law, deposit guarantee scheme, where the American citizens benefit.
Exactly.
What advice will you give the continent of Africa on those who think the SACCOs are charitable institutions and should remain a charitable institution, or SACCOs are just small institutions, should not grow to the level where you saw the local government authority, local government federal credit union, that you led, successfully led and transformed to where it is today?
Yes, it is a defeating point of view for individuals, members in particular, to believe that a SACCO should be simply a charitable organization. That it exists only for this sort of short-sighted purpose. A SACCO is a powerful idea. It's the kind of institution that can lift a family up out of poverty into a higher level of living. It's the kind of organization that can sort of galvanize a community into creating the kind of resources it needs to build educational institutions, for industry, for commerce. It is, to me, it is the preferred way to do business. Think about this. If you are a customer of a for-profit institution, there's an adversarial relationship that occurs between you, the customer, and the owners of the financial institution. They make money when they take profits out of your pocket. That's just how the institution works. I'm not going to villainize it. That's just the way the system works. But imagine when you are a member of a SACCO, then when the SACCO thrives, you thrive because you are a member of that institution.
What a better way to end this particular episode on regulation and compliance, which purpose you've seen is to build trust. At SACCO Insight, when we're amplifying people's voices, we believe that we're in the business of showing trust. We cannot be trustworthy if the system is not right. We cannot be trustworthy if we don't follow rules. We cannot be trustworthy if the community cannot judge and see that we are actually contributing into the system. I'd like to say that as a COSCA, we benefited immensely from the credit union system from the United States of America. And as we continuously grow, the relationship and the bond is continually growing because credit unions are quite strong in the United States. And as the continent, our continent is growing. Yeah. 1.4 billion. If you look at the index in terms of economic growth, this is a continent that is going to help change the world. And there is no better vehicle, as the UN is saying and declared, we believed it even before the UN said, that SACCO or cooperative business model is the best model to empower people living in the world, not just in the continent. Thank you.